And we're rolling. In 3, 2, 1. Today on the show, we will be talking about mental health and the Headstrong program. I'm your host, Mark Meincke, and this is the Meincke Show podcast. Our guest today is the Headstrong coordinator at the Mental Health Commission of Canada and a former youth development counselor. Fiona Haynes, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Well, I know I'm not as enjoyable as Alan Doyle. You've been hanging around in highfalutin here lately.
Right, I know. It's he's a lot of fun. He's an amazing guy, and he's really helping us with what we do, which is incredible to have that kind of recognition from somebody like him.
Well, Alan Doyle, for the audience of those that don't know him, is the lead singer of Great Big Sea. Are they still together as a band, or is he just fully solo?
He's fully solo now. Yeah,
fully solo. And so tell me a bit about the Alan Doyle adventures or the whirlwind over the last 3 days. Any great stories?
Well, he's a fun guy to be with. He comes from Petty Harbour, Newfoundland, and he's a great storyteller and a great fun person. So Friday we spent the day doing quite a lot of media stuff. And then on Sunday, we were able to go to the VIP event for the hometown hockey, which is quite entertaining for me because I'm not I'm a British person. I don't know who half those people were.
Hockey and Great Big Sea are not two things that are in the vernacular.
Well, great. I do have some Great Big Sea albums, but I don't know a lot about hockey. So, but it was really exciting. We met Ron McLean and Bearcat Murray and all these amazing people. That Ryan Strzelnicki, the young man from the Humboldt bus crash, he was there.
Oh God, yes.
Oh, what an honour to meet him! What an amazing young man. So that was very exciting for us. And then we had quite the surreal afternoon. We decided we were going to go take Alan to get something to eat. We decided we'd go to Marv's Diner in Black Diamond, which
I love Marv's Diner.
It's an amazing place.
Marv's
it's just
the best.
Amazing, and it's a complete 50s diner with pink vinyl, and the girls are all dressed up in the gear, like the classic diner gear. And I gave my friend a call, Malcolm Russell, who's a professional magician. Who happens to live in Black Diamond and is a massive Alan Doyle fan and Great Big Sea fan. So we spent the afternoon in Marv's with Alan Doyle, with my friend doing table magic, and then video chatting Alan's son, who happens to want to become a magician. And I looked around and this has got to be the most surreal thing I've done for quite a while.
Did Marv have any idea who Alan Doyle was?
I don't think so, no. I don't think he had a clue.
Was Alan tempted to take the guitar from Marv and show him how it's done?
I think he's a lot more respectful than that. When Marv started singing, he made us all stop so that we could listen. And he's very respectful of other musicians, and he's a great guy.
And now you're a Great Big Sea fan for sure.
Well, I was anyway, but
were you?
But even more so now, absolutely, yeah.
So how long have you been in the country now?
10 years. We moved here from the UK in 2008.
Now, before the move, what were you doing for a living or volunteer-wise in England?
I was a youth counsellor and a suicide interventionist for a youth organisation in the UK called No Limits.
So it's been altruism for you the whole time. It's just it must be a very strong sense of giving back and contribution and community that you have.
Well, the reason I do it is because I know what it feels like to be 14 years old and feel like you can't go on for one more day. I know exactly what that feels like. I'm also the mum of a daughter that tried to take her own life 5 years ago. I have a brother with schizophrenia. My nephew has schizophrenia. My grandfather, coming back from the Second World War, had really severe PTSD. To be honest, people ask me why I do this, and the truth is it's all I know. It's all I've ever known. I have severe depression and severe anxiety myself. I live with post-traumatic stress disorder. I have ADHD. I don't know how to be any other than what I am. And it matters to me so much that people know it's okay to speak up and it's okay to reach out for help. And it doesn't matter who you are or who you think you are or whether you're a great big burly construction worker or you're a 5-year-old child in kindergarten, everybody needs to know it's okay to ask for help and to reach out.
And that's something that's been changing over the years. Now, being that this has been a part of your life for literally ever, at what point have you seen, and is it different between countries, the stigma for mental health start to erode and people being more comfortable stepping forth? I mean, there's, thank God for them, people like Theo Fleury, who's very open about some horrendous stuff and not easy to talk about at all. When, like, societally, is there one country that's doing better than another as far as removing the stigma? What's been your experience?
Well, the really exciting thing about being part of the Mental Health Commission of Canada is the commission was actually started in 2007 because Canada was the only G8 nation that didn't have a national mental health strategy.
That's shocking.
I know, right? So the commission was set up at arm's length to the government, but funded by the government, to develop a national strategy and also to tackle stigma, because it was recognised that stigma was a really major problem. And stigma is that fear of speaking out. What's going to happen to me? People are going to think I'm worthless, or I'm weak, or I can't do my job. And the worst of all is self-stigma, which is when you think all of those things about yourself. And they recognised that this was a major factor in stopping people from going and getting help and support. So they developed, a number of programs, Headstrong being one of them, that were going to tackle those things. And so we have seen a difference. And actually Canada, from being nowhere, is actually now a world leader in anti-stigma research. But countries that are doing well are Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and now Canada. We are really leading the way. But it's still a big problem. Yes, people do talk more, and I think that is really amazing. But Canada's a country of a lot of smaller communities, many rural and quite isolated communities, and it's very difficult to go to the health centre if your auntie works on reception. She's going to want to know why you're there. It can be very difficult if you live in a very small community of a few hundred or a few thousand people to really speak out, and that's if the resources are even available to you, and very often they're not.
Anti-stigma research, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. I didn't know there was such a thing.
Yeah.
So what discoveries have been made recently in anti-stigma research? Like what do they recommend to, what actions, like what's going on with that? Like what can I do as an individual, and what are you doing as a group to help remove stigma? So
we have a number of different programs and approaches, and they were led by Dr. Heather Stewart, who actually holds the Bell Anti-Stigma Chair for Canada in Queen's University. So she's our lead researcher. And everything that we do, everything we put out into public is evidence-based. We don't do anything unless we know it works. And everything is very much based in real-world research with real people. So when we were developing Headstrong, we worked with 10,000 young people to develop the program to make sure that it worked. So what we know about stigma is it's usually based on fear. It's based on an idea of something that is most likely not true. For example, people tend to think that somebody that has a mental illness is likely to be dangerous. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when I have severe depression, I can't even take a shower. I'm probably at that point the least dangerous person you're ever going to come across. And the truth of the matter is, you're actually, as a person with a mental illness, you're 17 times more likely to be harmed by another as a vulnerable individual than you ever are to hurt somebody else.
It occurs to me, as you know, I'm a combat veteran,
mm-hmm.
and I'm very, very active in the combat veteran community and PTSD, OSI community. And what is interesting is that I see people that are suffering, that can't function, can't hold a job, but they're doing huge projects. Mm-hmm. And that is very confusing, I think, for people. Like, I've published a couple of books. I got this podcast. I run the Okotoks Business Association, and I have a thriving business. So you would never think there's anything wrong. Well, my wife knows different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it occurs to me, and as I'm speaking with you, that it is actually a coping mechanism to be purpose-driven.
Yes.
Because if you have a strong sense of purpose and contribution, that is a real good compensator. It's our own drug. Would you agree with that?
100%, yeah. I mean, the reason I do what I do is because I'm absolutely driven to do it by knowing how much pain people are suffering. And I want to thank you for your service and the sacrifices you and your family have made to protect us as Canadians. I think, it's so important that we recognise that and we recognise the scars that it leaves you with. So thank you for that. But yeah, I can't imagine doing anything else, because for me this gives me a sense of a purpose to my own experience as well. That if I can turn my own experience, which was I went through quite severe emotional, physical and sexual abuse from the age of 4 to the age of 14 by a family member. And of course that leaves you scarred and it leaves you different than perhaps otherwise you would have been. I've lived a life, I'm 50 years old now, I've lived a life of living with severe depression and suicidality because of that. It hasn't been easy, but it has been worth it. And what makes it worth it is the fact that I get up every single day of my working life and go out and try to change things and try to make things better, and to let every young person that I come across know that when you're in the dark, you're not alone. You're never alone. All you need to do is put your hand out and somebody will take it. You are loved. You are valuable. You are unique and we need you. And that's the message that I really want people to hear.
I'm guessing between the age of 4 and 14, nobody knew but you.
Yeah. And I couldn't tell anybody. I didn't know how to tell. Like, how can a 4-year-old child tell somebody what's going on with them? I didn't have the words. I didn't have the way to express that. And then as time goes on, that it takes so much away from you that you become unable to speak about it because you think you deserve it. You think you're worthless because this is what these people tell you that you are. You're nothing. Nobody cares about you. Nobody's going to believe you anyway. And they hurt you and they hurt you and they hurt you until there's nothing left but hurt. And then how can you tell somebody?
How old were you when you were able to first reach out and let somebody know? 29.
I was and a mother. And the reason it happened was because after I had my daughter, my life was, I didn't know real joy. I didn't know how to be relaxed. I was sick with anxiety all the time. I was depressed all the time. And she grew up as a young child with a mummy that cried all the time, a mummy that was sad, a mummy that was terribly anxious. And there was... I didn't want it to be like that. I really didn't, but I didn't know how to get out of it because it was all I'd ever known. And there was one day where she was 4.5 years old and she was in the bath, like bath time in the evening, summer evening, beautiful sunny day. And she's this darling child with these big green eyes and these like little brown curly hair, beautiful child playing in the bath with her toys. And I am lying curled up on the bath mat, absolutely breaking my heart. And I couldn't even tell you why. It just hurt so much and I didn't know what to do. And this little tiny girl reached over the edge of the bath and took my hand and looked at me and said, "It'll be all right, Mummy." And that was the moment that everything changed for me. At that moment, I knew I had to do something. If not for me, because I wasn't worth it, then for her, because I couldn't allow her to continue to live a life where this was who her mother was. And I went to the doctor the next day. And in the UK, you get 7 minutes for your doctor's appointment because they're so busy. So you have to like list your ailments in order of importance. So for heaven's sake, don't put the severed leg behind the sore throat, you know. So I went into the doctor and... I literally, I don't know why this happens, but any time you go to the doctor with either something that's from the waist down or the neck up, there's always a student doctor there, always. So I walk in and I put my head on the desk and I sobbed. And The student doctor looked rather taken aback, but my doctor, she sat there and she held my hand and she let me cry. And that was the first time I'd ever told anybody what had happened to me. And I was in there for 45 minutes and I came out feeling like a different person. She arranged for some counselling for me. She arranged for some medication for me. She made regular appointments for me to go back and see her. And what was more important than anything was she cared. And she gave me that time. Now, I came out into that waiting room and there were like 17 really angry older ladies in there because I'd taken so much time. But I just about skipped out of that surgery because what I came to realise that day was I wasn't wrong. I wasn't bad. I wasn't worthless. I was ill. And if I was ill, that meant there was something we could do about it. And maybe I didn't have to feel that way for the rest of my life. And that was such a revelation. I never knew that was even possible. And from that day to this, I continue to work on that recovery and continue to do everything that I can to make sure that other people know that is possible, that that's something that we can do for ourselves in a way that we can help ourselves forward.
You say ill, but I wonder if it's not illness, it's an injury.
Yeah.
That's in PTSD, the D stands for disorder, and I can't stand that because it's, I don't know, it just sounds wrong. But there's the other term is OSI, operational stress injury. To me, that's more accurate. And in the case of sexual trauma, to me, it is an injury.
Yes.
Because it's a normal reaction to an extraordinary circumstance.
Yeah.
And injuries can heal.
Mm-hmm.
Injuries can heal, which I think is a good way of looking at it. I'll just get you to drop your microphone just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
There we go. I was trying to signal you that there we go. That's better. But you've got your fingers in so many pies, and you do so much for the community and for others. Talk a bit about Pound Rescue and your involvement there.
Yeah, so that's I love animals, and I have a house full of animals, most of which
are you the crazy cat lady?
I'm actually the crazy cat, dog, tortoise lady.
Tortoise as well.
Yes, 2 of those. Yes, and most of the animals we have are rescue animals, and for me they, they rescue animals, but actually it's me that they've rescued always. I think they just give us so much. There's nothing. I mean, I'm sitting here at the minute with your little dog Sophie curled up on my feet, and it just makes me feel great, right? They give us so much. And
dogs have a sense about them. Like she's at your feet, not mine, which she tends to do with my guests. But it's almost like she knows that, hey, I think this lady could use a little extra comfort. Yes. So here I am.
Yeah. And I mean, I have our dogs, I know not everybody agrees with this, but our dogs sleep in our bedroom. And so beside me at night on her bed on the floor, I have our old Rottweiler who's like my shadow. We rescued her a couple of years ago. But I feel completely safe, and that matters massively to me because I know there's one side of the bed, there's one the other. My husband's there. I'm safe. And for me, of course, darkness and nighttime and bedrooms can be really scary places. Because
there really was a monster under the bed.
There really was, yeah. So the fact that I have them there is really comforting. And if I wake up from a nightmare or if I can't sleep because my mind is racing, I can just put my hand down and she's right there. So I wanted to do something to just sort of do a little bit to give back as best I could. So one of the things that Pound Rescue really needs, because it's a very small organisation, very small and local, but they do amazing, they do incredible amounts of work. I just wanted to do something to help, and what they really need is funds. So, they bring these animals in, they're abandoned, they go out and they find the stray animals, they bring them back. Very often they're in poor health. They've had no health care or vet care, so they do all of that stuff.
Where are the dogs housed that they look after?
But they have this incredible network of foster homes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they have, they've got people all over the place, all over Okotoks and right into southern Calgary, who are kind people who open their hearts and open their homes, and they'll take on dogs and cats, and often at very short notice. I saw the other day they had posted that they had 3 dogs that had come to them very suddenly. The owner had some very unfortunate things happen and was going to be in a homeless shelter, and needed somewhere for the dogs, and somebody stepped up and gave them somewhere to live. That to me that's love. And if I can do a little bit, and myself and a couple of my friends, we get together and we hold garage sales, and we do bake sales, and I sell stuff online, whatever we can do to raise a bit of money and a bit of awareness. And it's good fun. We have a lot of fun doing it.
Do you have a network of volunteer dog walkers?
I don't know too much about. Not myself specifically. I don't know if there are people that help with that. I know the foster families will all take, they're taking care of the dogs and walking the dogs. And yeah.
Years ago, the Edmonton SPCA, I know that they had a volunteer program where they had people volunteering to be dog walkers.
Yeah.
And then as a result, people would fall in love with the dogs and they'd end up adopting them.
Oh, Mark, that's a neat idea. I think we should start doing that.
Well, and I think so. Volunteer, because lots of people, not sure if they want to have a dog, but they still like dogs, but they don't know if they want to own a dog. To have volunteer dog walkers, we have a fantastic dog park. Why not?
Yeah.
And it occurs to me as well that if you dip into the PTSD community, where there's the idea of service dogs and whatnot. My dog is not a service dog, but she's still very helpful.
Yes, of course.
And then there's your pool of volunteer dog walkers right there, and a bit of a win-win.
Mm-hmm. I like the sound of that. I think we should talk about that later.
All right, volunteer dog walker program.
Yes,
you heard it here first, folks. I get a nickel for every dog that gets walked.
So it's to say there's, I try to. I feel very privileged to live in Canada. We went through a lot in the UK, and for me to be able to come to another place where I was welcomed and I felt valued in the jobs that I've done, and I've been able to make good friends, and just the whole, it's so beautiful. Like, there's nothing like waking up in the morning and seeing the deer walk across the backyard, eating out the bird feeder.
How is it, do you think, Okotoks turned into Little England? You can't swing a dead cat around here without hitting 3 Brits.
I know, and I think a lot of that is probably for exactly the same reasons that we ended up here. Is Britain is very busy and very overcrowded. And it's very difficult to find space. It doesn't seem to matter where you are, you feel overlooked and you feel crammed in. And it can be pretty claustrophobic.
What's the population on just the main island, Scotland and England?
About 65 million people.
So roughly double that of Canada.
Absolutely.
Not quite. And in a place you could fit England twice in Alberta.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So we're kind of on top of each other all the time.
Yeah.
We lived in Southampton City over there, and Southampton it's got a fascinating history. It's a medieval city, and it's a really interesting place. But it no longer felt like the safest place to be. And our daughter was having a lot of problems at school, being bullied. She was harming herself.
What's the difference in safety between years ago and now? Because I get this from a lot of people that have come over from England. They say that the crime's crazy. Why is the crime getting worse in England?
I think the economy has a lot to do with it. I think, and unfortunately with things at the minute, that a bit of an impasse with Brexit, we don't quite know how things are going to go. That's not helping. It's hard to make a living. It's a very expensive place to live. I had 2 jobs. My husband worked 7 days a week, and we still struggled to cover our bills. And, difficult to really go out, even to the movies or something, because it's, you've got to kind of save up for that. It's an expensive place to be. Whereas here, I just feel like there's room to breathe. I couldn't get over the size of the sky. The first week I was here, I spent mostly sort of like pretty horizontal in the car, just looking at this enormous, wonderful sky.
There's a lot of Brits on Vancouver Island, Victoria.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of British culture there, but it also has British weather.
Yes. Yes, I've been to Victoria a couple of times. It's rained pretty much constantly while I was there. So I can see why people do love it.
It's a gorgeous town.
It is beautiful.
I lived there for 2 years.
Yeah, we've done a few Headstrong summits over there, so it's a great place. But I love the blue skies.
And that's the difference.
Yes.
I was claustrophobic I was posted in a Esquimalt. So just
yeah.
I don't know, half-hour walk or 40-minute walk to downtown Victoria if you take the boardwalk, which is beautiful. And I love the ocean. But I missed the giant blue skies.
Yes.
I was born and raised in Alberta. And it's cold as balls in the winter. But we have the sunshine.
Yes.
And I think that growing up in England, I've heard from so many Brits that they would not give up the blue skies and sunshine. They said, screw the cold. No big deal.
Yeah.
I don't care about the cold. I got the sunshine. It's worth the trade.
Yeah. We grow up damp, that's for sure. It's like everything's damp all the time. And -6 over there somehow feels way colder than -20 over here. And I think, Canada's certainly... There are things that need to be done. There's things that need to be sorted out. I work a lot with Indigenous communities, and there's a lot of stuff that is very unjust and unfair that is going on in those communities. And I mean as far as clean water, healthcare.
The basics.
Housing, just, stuff that we take for granted that they're not able to do so. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done. But what an amazing place. And the thing is, we work together and we're getting it done. And that feels really incredible to me.
What is the biggest societal difference, like the difference in attitude and with the people from back home in England to here in Okotoks?
I love that in Okotoks I can walk down the street and say hello to somebody that I've never met before. I love that I know quite a lot of people in the town, so if I want to kind of hang out with somebody, there's like loads of people here I know, and they're all fantastic. But it feels like a stranger is just a friend you didn't meet until now. It's one of those kind of towns. Whereas I have to say in the UK, people tend to isolate themselves quite a lot, and you would definitely get a very funny look if you said hello to somebody in the street that you don't know.
Just drop your microphone just a little bit further.
Yeah.
There you go. A little bit further.
Okay.
There
Is that
you
better?
go.
All right.
There you go. But there's a hilarious skit of news flash. There's a crazy person walking around actually saying hello to people.
Right. Yes, I know it is. And I remember one particular morning where I was at the doctor's, and my neighbour was also at the doctor's, and I looked at her and went, "Oh, hello, how are you?" And she said, "I'm fine. How are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm absolutely fine." And then I looked at her and said, "So I wonder why we're both at the doctor's." But that's just kind of how we are. I mean, heaven forbid you talk about how you feel, really, or open up a conversation with somebody. They would be startled.
Years ago, I had a guy. He just came up fresh off the plane. He used to say fresh off the boat, but he's fresh off the plane, and he had arrived in Sherwood Park, just outside of Edmonton. And he's from Worcester, or Worcestershire.
Yeah.
Worcester. And
Worcester.
And I just thought that was like, I'm blown away. It's like, wow, you crossed the pond to start a life, and I just have nothing but respect and admiration for that and curiosity. I'm like, what the hell? That's a big move to start from, and he knew nobody.
Yeah.
So anyway, I took him under my wing, and he kept looking at me sideways with this suspicion in his eyes, like, what the fuck are you up to? Was the look on his face, right?
Yeah.
And that look continued. I take him out for dinner and just get to know him and ask him a bunch of questions, and we ended up selling my house, but he's always looking at me sideways, like, and he asks me where we go out for dinner. I think it was at Boston Pizza. He goes, "Do you take all your clients out for dinner?" And I said, "No, just the ones that got the nuts to cross the pond." Like, it's fascinating, man. I'm being a host, showing you around, showing you the sights. And he's looking at me, what's your game?
Right.
What are you up to? And we ended up being friends for years. We had a falling out, but we were friends for years. And he eventually explained to me where he's from, everybody's got an angle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true.
Everybody's out to get you, to run some sort of a scam on you. And he's just, that he fell in love with the kid. It's like, oh my God, Mark is not completely unique. There's other people like him around here. What is the deal?
Well, I can tell you a story about because we used to live on a very, a street that was kind of quite busy, and it was between sort of two pubs. So late at night, there would be a lot of people kind of coming down the road, quite loud, a lot of wing mirrors getting kicked off and tire slashing and all that kind of stuff. Lots of stuff that was not particularly conducive to a good night's rest. And when we first moved here, the first 2 nights we were in Okotoks, we literally, my husband and I were laying awake going, what are they plotting? There's got to be something going on. It's too quiet. Yeah, and it takes time to get used to that. It takes time to get used to that friendliness, because it isn't something that you necessarily expect.
I was in Portugal in 2007. My oldest was just a few months old. And it was like Portugal is to the UK what Mexico is to Canada.
Yeah.
It's the warm place that you go to vacation. It actually has some sunshine and warm water. And there are a lot of Brits there, and got along quite well. The Germans, however, so with the British people, they were a bit icy at first, but once you broke the ice, just wonderful and warm. After you get the icebreaker, there's that initial distance. But the German people that I run into, there would be this a bit icy in the beginning, and then they would stay that way. And they'd be looking at you like, why are you talking to me and trying to chat me up? What is your game?
Yeah.
Go away.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
It's difficult because you just, I spent 40 years over there. Always with that. I mean, I grew up in the era of the IRA bombings, and my father was in the military. And we went through many years when I was a child of having to check under our car in the mornings for bombs. If a parcel came to the house and we didn't know who it was from, we had to leave it outside until we could verify who it was from. We had a special way that the family used to phone us so that we knew it was family or friends. Otherwise, we never picked the phone up. That was kind of how we grew up. So to trust people is... it has been really wonderful, and I love it. I love that I can just. My husband does it. He's like, God, could you just not talk to people when we go out? I just want to get home.
Growing up, I imagine you had met British World War II veterans that or people that would have witnessed the London bombings, things like that.
Absolutely.
And I think that gives a person a certain maturity that you don't find in Canada, because with the exception of the odd person and people like veterans like ourselves that have been in war zones, they have a different look in their eyes. They have just a different way about them, a haunted look almost, and that is gives you a different world view than what I would say the naive bubble people that have never experienced these things. Has that been a challenge for you, all these nice Canadians, the idea that, geez, most of you don't have a flippin' clue how the rest of the world works?
You know what? I think that's such a blessing.
Yes.
Really, I do. And I don't think Canadians are very, I don't think they're naive. I think they're smart and they understand that stuff goes on. But I also think they're really glad that it doesn't often happen here, and thank goodness that it doesn't. I think it's a blessing. I don't want anybody. It's nothing. It's terrifying. Before you get in your car to go to school in the morning as a little kid with your mum, and your mum's checking under the car for a bomb. Like, who wants to live that way?
It's just not something that happens around here.
No, thank goodness. And here I do. I love how safe I feel. I love that I can be free to be myself. I remember saying that to my daughter as we came on the plane over here. I said to her, Daisy, we can be who we're meant to be now. Because it was like shedding a skin. We could leave all of that history behind, all that stuff that had happened to us, and come and really truly be ourselves. And what a miracle that is. What a great feeling that is. So here I can be my slightly quirky self, and people just go, oh, she's British. And it's fine. And, people have a lot of fun with my accent and, trying to do a British accent themselves, and it's just lovely, and I love it. I love being here. I feel very, very grateful and very privileged.
Well, Fiona Haynes, we are privileged to have you, and you're such an integral part of this community, such a strong voice, and thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing everything and for all the work that you do.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're listening to the Meincke Show podcast, available on iTunes, Anchor.fm, YouTube, and everywhere that you can find podcasts. To support this show, please look at the Patreon account and give it a think. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.